What was that?
Were there more stragglers?
No, I was the only one.
You're the last. Thanks. Good morning.
Morning.
How's everybody holding up? Good. My name is S.Dennison, a group of students, myself, a faculty. Our sustainability director and I have journeyed 8 long hours through the deer-speckled night to make it to UMACS this weekend. It was a long drive. I disclose now to you that this is going to be a little bit campy. Some of the presentations we've seen have been pretty professional. This one will be professional, but it's going to be playful. And I think in the spirit of sustainability, we need to keep that in mind, keep it light. So we are honing in from Bemidji, Minnesota, located about 4 hours northeast of the Twin Cities. We're over here. I think we're down here somewhere, am I right? Okay. Well, our university in the Northwoods is nestled by a lake, has been thinking about sustainability for quite some time. We believe that environmental stewardship, civic engagement, and a multicultural understanding are good things, like most other campuses that are here. Bemidji State University is a public liberal arts institution of about 5,000 students, with about a quarter of them living on campus. We have a green fee, a well-established sustainability office with lots of staff, some of them who are in here right now, and lots of spirit as well. Our presence is known in the community, and we're forging ahead on campus as well. So, as for me, well, I'm this guy. I wear many hats, and really always have. My interests are diverse but not disparate, and I look to find connections and share them with other people. I grew up in the Rockies and transitioned to the Northwoods and landed at BSU in about 2005, so that's 8 years ago. Needless to say, I stuck around for a master's degree, which I'm still finishing up with this pending thesis thing. That's pretty important. Another hat I wear is I'm a Minnesota Green Corps member. That's part of the AmeriCorps system. So I am stationed, I guess you would say, at BSU. Above all, I consider myself a transdisciplinarian. That's going to be a word I hope you take away from this conference. And a change agent. That's another one. I learned about change agents about 2 UMACSs ago from this very conference. Who might you be? I have a sneaking suspicion that you also are transdisciplinarians and change agents. Well, though I have labeled myself an interdisciplinarian, in the time between submitting the abstract for this project, I started my service with the Green Corps and my adjunct professordom at BSU. And I've changed my view on interdisciplinarism, or interdisciplinarity, and have labeled myself a transdisciplinarian. So we have, across the disciplines, different levels of involvement with disciplines. Unidisciplinary, not to be confused with being undisciplinary. Multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and then transdisciplinary considers all disciplines at the same time, simultaneously. There's a spectrum, and working in sustainability truly urges us to be transdisciplinary and use all the available tools we have to make positive changes in our world. A change agent, though, is something I learned about a while ago, and the word has stuck. Our characteristics are diverse, and our purposes are relatively in line. We are people who know and understand the dynamics that facilitate or hinder change, and we know how to define, research, plan, build support, and partner with others to make those changes. So what should you expect out of this presentation today? Well, we will toss our disciplines aside for half an hour in a wild fit of transdisciplinarity just to see what happens. We'll hopefully gain some new tools for our change agent arsenals. Likely you might be confused, you might be trepidatious, you might be cynical, maybe a skeptic, and you might get a headache, so bear with me as we go along. As for structure, we'll rethink some of our terms, identify the nexus of sustainability and rhetoric, explore methods to incorporate these ideas into instruction, and just be transdisciplinary together. So let's start by rethinking our terms here. And what is sustainability anyway? We rely heavily on this word as part of our change agent arsenal. We have to describe this word to people pretty routinely. So originally we thought it looked something like this. Sustainability is the place where economy, the environment, and society are considered when making choices about the future of our world. Okay? Then we started getting a little clearer about what we really meant. We identified the relationship of each of these, that is the environmental economic relationship here, the economic social, which is here, social environmental here, and then sustainability is somewhere governed in between all of those things. This is when we start to see words like justice, words like ethics, words like rights, okay? Efficiency, okay? We tend to be siloed, and sometimes we forget that sustainability is not something everybody knows a great deal about. And in our silos from different disciplines, sometimes we forget that other people might not know what we're talking about. So I think that we need to describe it a little better. So as for sustainability, the missing piece as I see it is that the model that we have is tough for people to understand without the sustainability background. And it doesn't take into account the economic and societal stuff happens within a closed environment, which is the environment. Or excuse me, within a closed system, that is our environment. So how do we deal with that? And how do we make it clearer? Well, we tend to be siloed, as I said. So sustainability involves understanding that the environment houses industry, transportation, people and their governments, education, technology, praxes and religions, history and historical trauma, the economy, information systems, the media, our responses to scarcity, agriculture. But it also includes what I said before, that is justice, equity, us, and above all, our wellness and the wellness of the world and the people around us. I think sustainability could be easier for people to understand this way. Okay? The environment houses society, wherein the economy and other infrastructures exist. Though I understand that equity, justice, resilience, and wellness are principles we have come up with to govern ourselves and maintain our homeostasis, I believe that these principles should guide us in our sustainable thinking. Adding these ideas to sustainable soup helps us steer away from thinking solely about environment, society, and economy independently from each other, and forces us to think about them simultaneously. So, in my view, I believe sustainability means looking through a diverse set of critical lenses as we work to develop answers to difficult questions. It involves understanding that global infrastructures and relationships exist within a closed system, that is our environment. It urges us to consider that complex relationships exist among people, their praxes, their places and systems, and requires us to have a firm understanding that what we do and or say has the potential to result in consequences. It asks us to evaluate solutions by asking if they promote wellness in the mind and body of peoples and the environment, are equitable, just, and resilient. You might be thinking right now, wasn't this presentation about rhetoric and writing? Well, the answer is yes. But I'm more interested in showing you that the nexus of sustainability and rhetoric is what we're going to talk about. In my view, rhetoric and sustainability are inherently interconnected. Without one, you can't really do well at the other, in my view. Their nexus is then that they involve looking through those critical lenses that we talked about before to help us formulate and articulate informed responses to difficult questions. They also involve understanding an understanding of complex rhetorical situations. And lastly, an understanding of sustainability augments an understanding of rhetoric and vice versa. I'll show you how in a minute. Rhetoric. S.Dennison. How many of you have a strange or strained relationship with rhetoric? Do you know what it is? Do we know what rhetoric is? Yeah? Good. Good. You're using it every day. So rhetoric is important to us. And though I could steal months out of your life to dive into this one, I'll refrain. We don't have enough time. I could spend a lot of energy on this and actually teach a class. Instead, here's 2,500 years in a slide. I don't expect you to be able to see this. It's really just to show you that it's had a long and tumultuous relationship as a discipline. Rhetoric really began as a public argument method. It transitioned later on from an oral tradition and is transformed into a formal course of study, into a framework for logic, and as now, later on here, in the colonial era, to a tool used in the assimilation of non-English speaking people, and now into more non-standard forms of English. So it's still in action of doing that. So now it's really a governing part of higher education. Rhetoric, though you might not have a class that you've specifically taken on rhetoric, if you've been asked to write a paper, or if you've assigned a paper to anybody, you're using a kind of rhetoric if you're making an argument about anything. So, rhetoric has become the predominant tool as well to evaluate student understanding in higher education. You've summoned it. You summon it all the time as a change agent. You need to be able to speak to people in an effective way that helps them understand where you're coming from, okay? To begin teasing out how we can unite sustainability and rhetoric in the classroom, we have to grapple with the complexity of the rhetorical situation for a moment, which is undoubtedly where an understanding of sustainability augments an understanding of rhetoric. The simplified rhetorical situation includes a consideration of the audience for who, where's my audience? There they are. There you are. The audience for whom we are speaking and writing, the occasion and purpose of the information exchange, and the presuppositions, or rather cultural historical context, of the audience as well as the writer-speaker. Anytime you're communicating with someone, this is something you're kind of doing, you may not be aware of it. So the effort of rhetoric is to help you become very aware of it and start asking particular questions as you sit down to communicate. So for audience, you have to know who are your readers or who are your listeners. Why are your readers or listeners motivated to pay attention to you? What are their expectations for what they're reading? What knowledge do they have and what do you share? Presuppositions, the historical context, what is your audience's praxis or praxis? Do you know what their belief systems are? Do you know if you're going to offend them and lose your audience with the first word you say? What is the audience's sense of structure of reality? That's something we don't think about all the time. How do they know things? Is your worldview and your paradigm so different that you might need to think about that and be prepared when you're communicating with them? The occasion and purpose is, what is your purpose for the exchange, the communication? Okay, as change agents, you really need to kind of have a goal in mind. Sometimes it's good to just have information exchanges with people, but you might have a purpose behind that. What is your audience's purpose for reading, academic writing or professional writing, for those kinds of things? If you're writing a grant, you will write differently than a letter, simply put. So summing it up, having good rhetorical skills improves our capacities as change agents because changing paradigms requires arguing for definitions of a worldview we'd like to see. In our case, we'd argue and attempt to persuade people to think sustainably. Okay. The classroom is a laboratory, and if it hasn't been treated that way yet, it should be treated that way now. Lots of things can happen in classrooms, lots of experiments can be tried, and it should be, with some view in mind of what you'd like to have happen. So in the classroom, we can use sustainability to help teach writing by narrowing topic selection. I guess we'll begin with that. We went through this slide really before in great detail of what these different systems are. And I think probably I'm an argument and exposition teacher and first year writing comp instructor as well. So one of the things that students come forward with to me, as well as faculty have asked me, how do you get them to pick a topic? Well, help them understand how the world works. That's my best way of putting that. Understanding systems helps them narrow down, oh wow, I'm interested in infrastructures, or maybe I'm interested in governments, or maybe I'm interested in wellness, not just the physical body's wellness, but the emotional wellness of a world. Maybe I'm interested in instruction or education and maybe technologies. That helps them start to pick through all of the things they could write about and maybe start considering bigger ethical things of justice and equity. Some of these other questions that we need to keep in mind as we want students and people in general to think critically. So we can look at that for a minute. Additionally, as I mentioned before with the rhetorical situation, sustainability can help us as we help students write for specific audiences or communicate with specific audiences, as well as to help them understand that by knowing their audience's praxis, their languages, the way that their preferred method of presenting information, are they visual? Are they audio? Can you call somebody up on the phone? Will they remember that? Or should you shoot them an email? And in that email, how should you address them? Things down to that level. Know your audience's history. This is a big one. There are people from every generation working on sustainability right now. You have to exchange with people that you may not have a great deal of understanding about their context, where they're coming from, what was their history. And so an idea that might seem benign to us now maybe is offensive, or vice versa. We need to be aware of those generational things, maybe lots of different things with that. Here's probably my favorite thing I've ever retained from a UMACS conference, is keto politics. Practicing keto politics. Aikido, well, just to explain, is a nonviolent martial art practice where an onrushing attack is opposed by rigid force, but only by blending with the energy of the attack, helping to deflect it harmoniously and harmlessly. Now, why am I pulling that into this? Because somebody somewhere in sustainability did before, and it's a really good idea. So in Aikido politics, others' beliefs are honored even if they are not shared. Okay? Practitioners remain centered in their values, but not in a fixed position. Instead, they're able to move around flexibly to view an issue from many angles. That doesn't mean you're indecisive. That means you're aware of your context. It means you're aware of your audience, and it means you're aware that what you say can have an effect on people. If you want more information, this is pulled from the Rocky Mountain Earth Institute. They are pretty much the people who are working with Aikido politics predominantly right now. We can also improve students' abilities to more effectively evaluate research. Okay. Another thing that I noticed, and this is for all of us as we are gathering information to do presentations or as we are gathering information to write a report on something, we need to understand the importance of evaluating the information we're encountering. With the age of the internet, there's information of all caliber floating out there that we need to be able to sort through. So what we can do is use the SCRAP test. The CRAP test, yes, you heard me right, is a real thing that was, I think, developed predominantly by California State University, and is a list of questions we can use to help students evaluate information, or other people in general evaluate information. And the evaluation criteria of the CRAP test involves the following things here. Not this top one. This is the original CRAP test. The information is timely. That's the currency of the information. The relevance of it. The information is important to a project. Are you bringing in facts that matter? Why are you telling us numbers if that's not what we're looking to do? Maybe we're looking for information about people. That's, again, knowing your audience. Do the people that you're interacting with, do they speak in numbers, or do they speak in case studies? You need to pay attention to that. Authority, the source is credible. There's lots of different ways we can do that. This is much more developed. If you just type in CRAP test on Google this way, you will find it from the California State University website. Each of these has about 6 questions with a new media piece in there as well. So you can start to understand, oh wow, I can actually use these tools if it's a .org or a .edu, that might mean something different than if it's a .com. Things down to that specific of nature you can really use to help you evaluate. So I added the sustainable component to this test because I think if we are to be teaching sustainability, or if we are going to be using sustainable rhetoric, we need to consider that the source offers a sustainable perspective. So is it working on being just, resilient? Is it offering resilient solutions, or is it just posing a problem? Where can you find information that's doing what you want it to be doing? Lastly, using sustainability as a heuristic, really a model, can offer an interesting strategy to outline arguments. So we've heard of the 5-paragraph essay, the doomed 5-paragraph essay. That is the intro, the body, and then the conclusion. We need to move beyond that because it's not getting to the heart of these matters. So we need to ask good questions. That's how you can form better arguments. Ask good, pointed questions to help you come up with what you need to cover. What are the features of the environment of this issue? What is the climate and rhetorical context of it? Okay? And maybe is some pre-thinking. You may not write about that, but you do need to set a scene for your audience. How is society connected to this issue? Are there economic implications? How does this issue promote equity, justice, wellness? How doesn't it? How might a resilient solution to this issue look, and what steps could we take to get there? Asking the right questions is central to being a change agent. Learning how to pass along the tools for our change agent arsenals is too. And I think we all are doing a good job at that from what I've seen. So allowing our hats to be worn at the same time allows us to be at the top of our game and do the best for our communities. I've heard a lot today on time poverty and being overextended. We all are working hard, and we need to remember that we have to be an example as well to try and keep our own balance in this process and trying to be a good example for the people we are trying to reach out for. Beginning to see that sustainability also already exists in some capacity across all disciplines is really important for us to know. You have to meet your audience where they're at. You have to go with what they know. If you're talking with somebody that's involved with criminal justice and you're trying to help them see from your view, find an ethical issue. There's ethics in lots of things. There's issues of resilience. There's issues of wellness. Those are things that pertain across the disciplines. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you. If you have questions, we have a couple minutes for questions, thoughts. Yeah.
Do you have any tips? Let's say that I, at my Office of Sustainability, were to write a blog post, and I want it to be accessible to faculty and staff and to the freshman students at the university. Do you have tips about how to mend that gap and make it just like make one thing excludes everybody? You know?
I don't know that you can or that you should, personally. I think that it takes more work to reach out and try to communicate on the same vein with faculty and staff, and it takes a different vein to work with students. And I think that keeping it separate is in a way important because that shows that you're speaking the language of the people you're working with. So it's really, that's another thing, because we have so much to do that we want it to be kind of overarching in an umbrella kind of method. There isn't one. So I think that that's a really good thought though, is that we just need to take that time and say, I'm reaching out to be showing you that I care and want to speak in your way. Thank you. Other questions? Is this out there? It's okay if it's out there. Any other questions? Yeah.
How, like, with the students that you teach and the people that you talk to, like, I know that it's really important, like, when you're writing or when you're speaking to people to acknowledge the counter argument. So, like, how would you recommend doing that, like, from a sustainable perspective? Because you still want to, respect people, but at the same time,
It's hard. It's hard, especially if you're passionate about something, and sometimes you get fiery. And I teach students and I talk to them about this balance between diplomacy and passion. And there's kind of that same spectrum, and you have to kind of figure out, can your audience handle that passion, or are you going to turn them off immediately? I call them red flags. You have different red flags in speaking, and if you're talking to somebody and you accidentally invalidate them, do we know what validation is? Validation is like making them feel good. Invalidation is making them feel bad, in a nutshell. So if you say something that you're not paying attention to the context of the situation and you offend them, you've lost your audience. So to be aware of that and to know that passion is a good thing, but diplomacy is also. And you don't want either by themselves. They need to kind of be balanced out by the other. Does that help a little?
Yeah.
I think I have time for one more question and then we need to switch.
If you could, there is a lot of good information in here, but if you could like put it into one nutshell sentence, what would your takeaway be?
What we say and what we write is important and has an impact. And to know that that is another place where sustainability can and should exist is what we need to be doing. We need to write and think and communicate in a sustainable way. It needs to be across the disciplines in that transdisciplinary way. But not only that, it also needs to be within yourself. You need to act as a sustainable person and kind of consider those things. It's about consideration, I think, about knowing that people matter, knowing that all of us have our own pain. We all have our own pains, and if we can accept that, it's a lot easier to have compassion and empathy. And I think that helps promote change, if you can meet somebody at that space. I have a card if you need them or want them, or if you want to talk later. But we'll give it away for the next person.
You're in the second one.
Yeah.
Choices.